Hi guys, welcome to this video. In this video, we're going to be learning Django by building 3 different projects. So the projects we're going to be building are a URL shortener, a to-do list app, and an English dictionary. So without wasting any of your time, let me show you the demo of everything we're going to be building. So the first one I have here is the URL shortener. So let me show you how this works. If I go to Google and I search for a term like Python, once I click on enter, you see that it gives me this link to the search page, but the link is very long. Now if I come here and then paste that link in here, let me just remove this and click on shorten, you see that it generates this link for me, this shortened link. Now once I copy this shortened link and then go open it in a new tab, you see it automatically redirects me back to the link which I shortened. Now that's how the URL shortener is going to work. Now the next app we're going to be building is the to-do list app. Now let me show you how the to-do list app is. So if we come here, you're going to see a Django to-do list app. This is what we're going to be building, and we're going to host all the apps in which I'm talking about. So how this works is you can add a to-do list. So let me say something like get a drink. Once I click on add, you'll see that it automatically adds it to do list, and once I click on delete right here, it automatically deletes it from the list. So that's what we're going to be building. And the third one we're going to be building is an English dictionary. So if I come here and I search for a word like English, once I click on search, it's going to give me the meaning, the synonyms, and the antonyms. So you see the meaning of the word, the synonyms of the word, and antonyms of the word. Now let me search for something else like set. Once I click on search, it's also going to give me the meaning of the word, a whole bunch of synonyms and antonyms. That's what we're going to be building. Now I must say that we're going to deploy all the projects in which we're building, and I'm going to link the source code to all these projects in the description below, so if you are stuck you can easily follow up and you can get all the HTML files and the templates we are using through the source code in the link below. And if you like more tutorials like this, don't forget to check out my channel at Code with Tommy. Having that said, let's go straight into the tutorial. So guys, in this tutorial session, we're going to be building a URL shortener using Django. So the first thing we need to do, as always, is to make sure that we have Django installed. I'm just going to say pip install Django, and then this command line is going to install Django on my computer. But since I already have Django installed, it's going to tell me something like requirement already satisfied, as you can see. But for you, it should go ahead and install that. So let's just create our Django model. Say Django admin. Let's say start project, and then let's name it URL shortener. So now we have created a new project named URL shortener. Let's just go into that project. So in here we're going to create a Django app. So we're going to say Django admin start app, and let's name it shortener. So this is going to start a Django app named shortener. If I press dir, I'm going to see shortener. So now that we have our project set up, we're just going to import it in Visual Studio Code. So let's come here, and then what we just need to do is to open folder, and then we're going to go into that folder. So right here is the folder, and select folder. Now it's going to open this my Django project in this code editor so we can code. So now that we have this opened, what we just need to do is to set up our project. So the first thing we need to do is to create a new folder and name it templates. Now in this template folder, what's going to be in there is the HTML pages in which we are going to be using in this project. So before I continue, I have my HTML page here, which is index.html. I'm just going to drag it into Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to put it in template. So let me say once again that I'm going to link everything we are going to use in this tutorial. I'm going to link the source code in the description below, so you can check them out to get any file you need. Now that we have these, we're just going to come into our URL shortener, going to settings.py, and then we're going to come down. The first thing we need to do is to add our app, which is shortener. Now that we've added that, we're going to come down into templates and we look for theirs, and we're just going to say base there, and we're going to say slash templates. So what this does is that it tells Django where to look for all our template file, and as you know, we saved it in our base directory in a folder called templates, which we created right here. So let me save this settings.py and close it. Now I want to do the URL mapping. If I run my project now, what you are going to see is Django default template. So we want to show our own HTML template. For us to do this, we're going to come into our app, create a new file, name it urls.py, and then we'll say from Django.urls import path, and then we're also going to say from the root import views. Now we're going to say URL patterns should be equals to path home, we'll say views.index, and we're going to give it a name of index. So now what we just need to do is to come into views and create a new function and name it index. It's going to take a request, and then let's render our HTML page, which we have in here, that is index.html. So we'll say return render request index.html. Now when we save this, it should automatically use this index.html as our home page, but not yet. That's because we only did URL mapping for our app. We also need to configure it for our main project. So we're going to come into our main project, go to urls.py. What we're going to do right here is to import include, and then we're going to create a new path, and then let's give it blank, and we're going to say include shortener.urls, and we're going to save this. Now I can cancel this. Now let me open a new terminal and just run our project. So now a new terminal is being popped up, and what I'm just going to say is python manage.py run server. Now this command line is going to run our project on the localhost. So let's just wait for it to run our project quickly. Okay, as you guys can see, it's running on our localhost. Let's open our browser, go to our localhost, and then we should see our HTML page. As you guys can see, we have this beautiful HTML page. So now that we've taken care of everything about the templates, let's dive straight into configuring the backend. So what we want to do is to create a Django model that is going to save a URL anytime a user inputs a URL and then shorten it. So let's just go ahead and do that. Let's come back to Visual Studio Code. We can close this, and then in our models.py file, let's create a new model. Let's say class, and let's say links. Okay, or let's name it URLs. I think that is better. So URL, and we'll say models.model, and then it should take two fields, which is link. So we'll say models.char field, and let's give it a max length of 10,000 because some links are very long. And then let's give it a UUID. Let's say models.character field also, and the max length of this should just be 10. Now what this is doing is that if you are very familiar with Django models, you know that it's the same thing as a database. So we're creating a database named URL, and it's going to have two tables. The first one is going to be link, and the second one is going to be UID. So link is going to take the URL which the user wants to shorten. So once the user comes here and input a URL right here and clicks on shorten, whatever that user's input should save in this link model, and then a UID should be passed to that link. That means a specific ID will be passed to that link. You guys are going to understand in a bit. So let's save this first. Let's bring back our terminal. Let me just open a new terminal here quickly, and then let's say python manage.py make migrations. And then after making migrations, we'll say python manage.py migrate. So now this is going to migrate everything into our database. So now that we have models migrated, what I like to do is to configure my admin interface so I can easily see my database. So let's just say python manage.py create super user. So now let's just use admin, and let's also use admin right here. Let's give it a password. Now it has, okay, why, and now it has created that super user. We can cancel this. If I come back here and go to /admin, okay, /admin, it's going to prompt me to log in. Now once I log in with the details in which I created now, and I say login, now you guys will see that we've logged into our admin interface. So for now, we only have two databases, which is users and groups. So if I open my user database, you're going to see the admin which we just created. But what we want to do is that under here, we should also have a new database, which should be URLs. So let's go ahead and do that. We're just going to open our admin.py and register that model. First of all, we need to import the model. Say from .models import URL. And right here we'll say admin.site.register. Now let's register that URL. Now once we save this and come back here and refresh, you're gonna see that that is gonna pop up right here. So let's wait for our server to load. So if we come back here and open up our terminal, okay, our server is loaded back. Now once we refresh, you guys can see that we now have a new database table which is called URLs. So now that we have this, let me go to my home page. Once a user just clicks, input a URL, clicks on shorten, it should automatically save that URL into this database. And since we're going to be using Ajax, it's not going to reload this page. Now you know that once you submit a form in HTML, it's going to take you to another page or reload that page. But we're going to use Ajax to submit this form. So once the user just input a particular URL right here, what is going to happen is once you click on shorten, without the page reloading, it's going to be saved into this database, and then it's going to return back a response with a unique ID. So let's go ahead and do that. You will understand what I mean. Now we're just going to come back. We're going to come into our index.html. That is our template file. So let me cancel this terminal for now. What I want to do is to go down into this input. So right here is this. So what I'm looking for is this input, and I want to make it a form. So let me come back. So I'm going to say form, and then I'm going to close it right here. So let me just delete this. So what I always want to give this form is an ID. That's the only thing. So I'm going to say ID, and the ID should just simply be, let me say, my form or post form. Now this is good. And we're going to be using a post method. So when we're using a post method in Ajax, we're not going to configure it right here, but we're going to configure it in the script. So you're going to see that also in a bit. So let me say csrf_token and save. So this button, let me give it a type. Let me say type should be submit, so that once they click on this button, it should submit this data. And this also should have a name. Let me save it as, okay, it doesn't have a name, so we'll say name should be equals to link. So now that we have this, what we just want to do is to come down after all our HTML and create a script. Let's just close that, and then let's make sure that it has the type. We'll say text/JavaScript. So what we just want to do now, let's give it some indentation. We're going to say $sign, and then it's now we're going to start with configuring or submitting our form. So before we start doing this, let's come into our views.py. So once the user clicks on shorten right here, we want it to take this to a particular URL. So that URL is going to be called create. So in that URL, it's going to create that in our database and then send a response here. Let's do that quickly. So I'm going to come back right here in urls.py. Let's create a new URL and name it create. And let's say views.create. Name equals to create. Let's make sure this has a comma. Then right here in views, create request, and then let's pass for now. So now let's save this. So after doing this, since we have this URL, what we just want to do now is to come here and submit that form to this URL. So once we submit this form to that URL, then we're going to come back here and then get everything in which the user inputted and just save it into our database. So let's do that. So after saying $sign, I'm going to say document, and then what we want to do is on submit. So open a bracket, submit, on submit of post form, hashtag right here, hashtag post form. Now how we are getting this post form is basically this form. So what we're saying is on the submit of post form. That means once the user clicks on this submit of this form, what do we want to do? Let's give it a function. So that should be outside this, comma, function should be outside that, and let's say e is like this. So now what we just want to do is to say e.prevent default. So what this e.prevent default is going to do is that once a user clicks on submit of this form, it will make sure that that page doesn't reload. So now that we have that covered, let's now use our Ajax. So we'll say $sign again, .ajax, and then let's open curly braces, press enter. Then the type, which is also the method, should be post. And then URL, it should be taken to /create. So comma, and then the data in which we want to pass into it. So let's do this, and then the link, $sign, hashtag link dot value. So now we're going to say CSRF middleware token $sign, and then input. Before we say input, put this square brackets. Let's close that real quick and say name. The name should be CSRF middleware token. So that's what that does. And then after this, we should say .val to get the value. So we're also sending in a CSRF token. So after doing this, we're just going to come down here and click on comma, and then let's also give it a success function. So after doing this, okay, in here we're going to say success, and let's give it a function. So that means if everything was being submitted successfully. For now, let's leave it blank like this. So let's just leave everything blank for now, and let's come here and make sure we put our semicolon since we are working with JavaScript. So now that this success function is let me say is blank, we're going to take care of that after we submit our form. So now let's save. So since we are sending all this data into our create URL, let's go into our create URL and get those data. So right here in this views.py, I'm going to go into that function. Let's remove this pass and say if request dot method is equals to post. Now if they are sending a post method, let's say URL should be equals to post dot, it should be equals to request dot post link. So we're getting what the user put as this link and storing it in a variable named URL. And then let's also use a UID. So once the user also stores that variable, once the user stores that link, we also want to assign a particular ID to that variable so that we can use that ID to generate a shortened link. And once the user goes to that shortened link, it should come back to this URL. So it's going to make sense also. Let's just import UUID to get a unique ID. So we're going to say string. We want to make sure it's in a string. So say that UUID dot UUID 4 open bracket close bracket, and then what you just want to say square brackets column 5. So we're shortening because when this generates a unique ID, it generates it very long, but we want to shorten it to only 5 strings. So let's save. Okay, we don't need to save yet. So what we need to do now is to, after we get all this data, we just want to save this data in our database. For us to do this, we need to import our models. We'll say from .models import URL. So right here now, we're just gonna say new on URL should be equals to URL dot URL open bracket close bracket, then the link should be equals to the URL, and then UUID should be equals to UID. Now once we have these, we're just going to say new URL dot save, and then once we save these, we just want to return a response. We'll say return HTTP response, but before we use that, we also need to import HTTP response. We'll say from Django.http import HTTP response right here. So we say return an HTTP response of the UID. Now we can save this. Once we go back here and test this, now it should work. Let's refresh this page. Now let's give it a URL. Let's do something like https, then let's say www.youtube.com/codewithtommy. Okay, let's say slash. Now once I click on shorten, nothing happens, but if I come right here and click on refresh, as you can see, nothing happens again. So we need to open our inspect element. Right here, we're going to come to the network. So now let's try it again. Let's click on shorten. So as you can see, we have an error, and this is what the error is. Okay, it's giving us a Django error actually. So let's just enlarge this and see. So let's go and see where the error is coming from. It's coming from right here. So request.post link. So there is an error actually right here. Let's see why that is giving us an error. So we're gonna go back and just check that. Let's come here. So right here, instead of saying URL, let's give it link, and let's say link should be equals to link, and then let's make sure everything is working perfectly. So we'll say if request the method is equals to post, then let's store a link should be request dot post link, and then UID should be string. Now that is nice. Let's save it and go try it again. Now let's close this. Let me just copy this URL I want to shorten. Now let's refresh this and paste, and then click on shorten. Now it still gives us an error. Now we're going to see what's up. Okay, I think it's not getting this link in which we are trying to give it. So let's see. Let's go down again. So it's not getting link. The problem will be from index.html. So it's not getting link. We're gonna come here. So I think the ID should be link. Okay, not this. The ID should be link. Let's save it and hit refresh. And let's click on shorten. As you guys can see now, we don't have any error again. Once we come here now, preview, everything is nice. So this is the UID which we are returning as an HTTP response right here. As you can see, we return an HTTP response. That's the response it gives us. If we come here and hit refresh, we'll see that we now have a new object, the link with the UID. So let's try it again. So let's just say youtube.com, and let's click on shorten. It does another one with a UID also. Once we click on refresh and we come in here, you should see that link with that UID. So now what we just want to do is to show the user the shortened link in which we generated. So for us to do this, we're going to come right here into our index. We want to create in this section after the form, let's have our own div tag, and in that div tag let's create like an h2 tag. So in this h2 tag is where the link should be. For now, let me put link and refresh, so we'll see how that will look. Okay, it's in this shorten. So let's just bring all this away and then put it outside here. So let's save this and see again. Okay, same thing. So let's just remove the div tag which we have. I think there's a styling attached to that div tag. Now once we refresh, it should just be a link. Okay, that means there's a styling attached to the h2. Nice. So what I just want to do is to remove this from main. Let me just remove this and put it right here. Let's save it and see. Okay, it's outside. Okay, yes. So what we just want to do now, let's try and put it here. Let's hit refresh. Nice. So we just put it in this section, and now we can see that the link is showing there. So this is where we want the link to show. Now let's just remove this link and leave it blank. So once we get an HTTP response, we want to show the link right there. If I save it and come back, you can see that it's blank. But once we shorten a URL, we want to see the link pop up here. For us to do this, we're going to come back to our script. Where we see that success function, we're going to get the HTTP response. Now, whenever we're returning an HTTP response, for us to be able to get that response using Ajax, we're going to get it as a variable named data. So I'm going to say data. Now, this data is a variable which has the HTTP response stored in it. So in here, we're just going to say $h2, and then what we just want to say is that HTML, and then let's change that to, now let me give it this. Let's just simply change that to localhost 8000 / let's add data. Now if I save this and go, you are going to see what it looks like. So let me refresh it. Let me put that same thing and shorten. Now once I shorten, you see it gives me this link which is localhost 8000 / this UID which was assigned to this URL. So now for now we're just using localhost / because we've not deployed our app to on the web. So once we deploy our app, once we host our app we're building on the web, we're going to use a specified link. We're not going to use localhost 8000. We're going to use, let's say, link.ml/this, or just a short link. But for now, let's stick with 8000, localhost 8000. So now what I want to do is that once the user now copy these links, open a new tab and go to that link, it should take the user back to that URL in which it's shortened. That's how a URL shortener works. So for now, we're saying page not found. Let's go and do this. We're just going to come right here into URLs. I'm going to create a new URL and name it, let's leave it blank, and let's take a string. It's going to be a dynamic URL and say pk. So say views dot, let's say go and go. So let's come into views, create a new function, name it go request, and let it also take pk. So now once we have this, we're just going to get pk, and then what we just want to say is URL details should be equals to URL dot object dot get, the one in which the UUID is equals to pk, and then let's just return. We want to redirect, so we need to import redirect right here. Just gonna scroll down, return redirect the user to URL details dot link. Now let's save this. Now what we're doing is that once the user goes to slash, let me come into our url.py. So this is a dynamic URL. It's gonna create something like slash, then it's gonna take a string and save it in a variable named pk. So once the user comes to slash this UID, it's gonna, this string pk is gonna be replaced, and what's gonna be there is this id. So once we now have this id, we're going to come into our views.py, get that id as pk, then we're now going to search for our model and make sure that that UID is present in our model and a link is being assigned to it, and then we're going to get that link. So I'm just going to say return redirect URL details.link. So I'm just redirecting the user to that link. So let's save it and test this out. So now let's refresh. Okay, our server is not running. Let's pop it up. Okay, the problem is here. We need to put a comma. Let's save that. Reload. So now let's refresh our app. Now let's just put www.youtube.com/codewithtommy, and let's click on shorten. It gives us our URL. We copy it, paste it right here. So now you can see it says page not found, www.youtube.com. So we need to pass this as a URL. For us to do this, we'll come back here. We're gonna say https and this. Now once we save it and come back, let's copy this our page again. This is our URL and paste it. Now you'll see that it takes me to that page. You see, it takes me to https youtube.com. So now let's come back. Let's try it out with another URL. Let's say www.socialblade.com. and once I click on shorten, it gives me that URL. Let me copy it and paste it right here. Now you see it takes me to socialblade.com. That's how our URL shortener works. So I hope you guys enjoyed and understood what we did in this video. If you did, please don't forget to smash that like button and please subscribe. Thank you for watching this session. So now that we have created our project, what we just need to do is to host our project online. So for us to do this, we're going to use Heroku as our hosting platform. So we don't need all these. We can just quit this. What we need is two Python libraries, and they are Unicorn and Django Heroku. So for us to install these libraries, we're going to say pip. Okay, let's pip install Gunicon and Django Heroku. Now once I click on enter, it should tell me requirement already satisfied because I already have it. But for you, you should go ahead and install it. So you see it says requirement already satisfied. So now that we have this installed, what I just need to do is to come into my root directory. Let me close all this. In my root directory, I'm going to create a new file and name it runtime.txt. Now this file should contain the Python version in which you used in this project. So I use Python 3.9.1. Then we're going to save it. Another file we need to create is proc file. So this proc file is going to contain these web Gunicon, then the name of your project, which is URL shortener dot wsgi column application log hyphen again file, and like this. So we're just gonna save it, and then after doing this, what we just need to do is to pip freeze requirement.txt, pip freeze requirement.txt. So that's done. A new file here is requirement.txt. So I'm going to come into our project folder and go to settings.py, and up here, that's right here, we're going to import Django Heroku, and then we're also going to import DJ database URL, and then we're going to come here into allowed hosts and make sure that we allow all the hosts. After doing that, we're going to scroll down and we're going to come into databases, delete this, okay, delete from here, and then we're just going to say DJ database URL dot config. So after doing this, I'm going to scroll down to the end, and right at the bottom I'm going to say Django Heroku dot settings, then open bracket, in that bracket I'm going to say locals, and like this. So after saving this, we're good to go. Now we're just going to come into our command line, and what we need to do is to log into Heroku by saying Heroku login. Okay, we typed that wrong, so we'll say Heroku login. Now this is going to prompt us to open our default browser and automatically log us in to our Heroku account. So let's wait for it. It should give us a reply soon. So let's type any. So now our browser should open up. So when I click on login, logged in, if I come back, it's automatically logged me in. Now let me create a new app by saying Heroku create, and let me name it URL shortener YT123. I'm just naming it a random name simply because I know there will be names that already have URL shortener, because in Heroku you can't create a project with a name that has already been created before. So if I just use plain URL shortener, it will tell me another person have taken this name. So that's why I just use that random name. So since we have this now, we're just going to say git status, git initialize, git status, nice. So git remote v, then git remote add Heroku, and then what we want to add is up here this git link. Just paste it and enter, and then let's say git remote v again, nice. And then let's say git status, nice. So what we just want to do is to create a new database, which is Heroku add-ons, create Heroku PostgreSQL obdev, and press enter. So now this should create a Postgres database with the obdev version. So database has been created. So now after doing this, I'm just going to say git add, and then it should add. So I'll say git commit. Let me say it the first time, and then I'll say git push Heroku master. So now this git push Heroku master is the final step in deploying this project. So once this is done, it should automatically deploy it onto Heroku, and then we are going to get our site URL. So let's wait for it to deploy. It should deploy within a minute, depending on how large your project is. So our project is pretty light, so it should install within seconds. So let's see. Let's just wait. Okay, installing collected packages. So what it's doing now is installing the packages which it saw in the requirement.txt files. So let's just see. After compressing, it should say done. So let's wait for it to say done. Okay, it says done, and then now let's wait for our final confirmation, and then we're just going to go to this URL, which is the URL of our project. Let's wait for our final confirmation again. Okay, that should pop. So it says verify deploy done. So let's just go to this, open link. Now you guys can see our project is ready. So what we want to do now, before we test our app, we have to come back here and migrate our database. So say Heroku run python manage.py make migrations, and then after this we're going to say Heroku run python manage.py migrate, just like how we migrate our database when we are building our project. So let's wait for this command line to run. It should actually say no changes detected, yes, but I just like doing that so that we won't get any error. So migrate now. Now this will migrate everything into our database. So let's give it a moment. It should migrate that soon. Let's see. If I didn't do this, it's going to give me an error. So I just have to do this to prevent that error. Okay, and then done. So let's come back now. Refresh. So now let's try to shorten a URL. Let's shorten this again. Now you see it gives me localhost 8000 and this link. So if I go to this URL slash this UID, it's going to take me to youtube.com/codewithtommy. But because when we were building our project, we added this localhost. So that's because we're still testing our project. Now we're supposed to add the URL of this project which we've deployed. But as you can see, we are building a URL shortener. If our URL shortener is something like this, let's say once you shorten a URL, it gives you this type of URL, then I don't think we are building a URL shortener again. So I'm going to buy a free domain. I'm going to get a free domain. There is actually a site which allows you to get a domain for free. So I'm going to get a free domain, a very short one, and I'm going to connect it to this our project. So let me show you the domain I'm going to get. Before I show you, let me test our app. Once I click on enter, you can see it takes me to youtube.com/codewithtommy. Now once I go back, now what I want to do, I want to show you the domain which I took. So you guys can see I already took this domain. It says sorry, source.ga is not available. So this is the domain I'm going to use for this project, source.ga. For now, it says source.ga is not available because I already took it. So as you can see, you can come in and claim source.cf. You can claim some domains for free, but if you want to buy the .com.net, you need to pay for them. So that's what we're going to use in this project. So I'm just going to connect it with this my Heroku site. So when I connect it, I'll be back. So guys, right now I've already connected the domain, the custom domain which I have, to this our project. So you can see now, if you go to www.source.ga, it takes you to this URL shortener. So let's test out this shortener. So let's test it out and click on shorten. Now it gives us this URL. The last thing we want to do to this project is to update this. So instead of it saying localhost 8000, we want it to say www.source.ga then /the ID. So let's go and do this. We're going to come back to our Visual Studio Code, and then in our index.html right here, instead of saying localhost 8000, let's see, I think it's better if we copy this, just come here and paste, so we don't need to put HTTP. Let's just say www.source/ga then data. So this data is the ID. So let's just save this, and then what we just want to do now is to say git add. So this, what I'm teaching you now, you are going to be able to know to update your project even after you've already hosted it. So we already have this hosted on the web, but we want to make a change and update it. So once you make that change, to update it, you just come back to your CLI and say git add, and then you're going to say git commit -m, and let's say make it better. Nice. And then we just say git push Heroku master. Now this should redeploy it again with the updated changes. So let's just wait for that. It shouldn't take long this time because we've already deployed it. So let's see. Let's wait for it. It should do within a second. So let's see. Okay. Almost done. After compressing, it should say done. That means it's worked. Yes. And now we should see deploy to Heroku. So once we see this deploy to Heroku, it has deployed. But let's just wait for the last confirmation before we go check. So let's wait. It should say yes, done. So let's go back to our browser and then reload this page. So now let me shorten this URL and click on shorten. Now if I just take this link and copy it and paste it here, now you see that it takes me to that URL which I shortened. Right here you can see that I shortened youtube.com/codewithtommy. Then once I click on that, it says youtube.com/codewithtommy. So that's what this should do. So let's try it out with another website. Let's go to Google, and then let me just search. Now this URL link, let me copy it, and then right here let me paste and click on shorten. So now it gives me this link. So everything is working perfectly. In this tutorial session, we're going to build a to-do list app using Django. So without wasting any time, let's get straight into it. The first thing we need to do, as always, is to make sure that we have Django installed. So we should do pip install Django. So since I have Django installed already, it's going to tell me requirement already satisfied. But for you, you should go ahead and install Django on your computer. So it's going to tell me here, as you can see, it says requirement already satisfied. That is to show that I have Django. So now that we have Django installed, let's just go ahead and create our project. So I'm just going to say Django -admin start project, and let's name it to do list. Now once we press enter, it's going to automatically create a Django boilerplate, which is a folder which contains all the necessary files to start a Django project. So let's go into that folder which is called to do list. Now if I press dir, I'm going to see manage.py and another folder called to-do list. Another thing I need to do now is to create a Django app, and I'm going to call this app to do. So I can just do Django admin start app, and I can name it to do. So once I click on enter, as you can see right now we have only one file and one folder. But now once I check it again, you see I have two folders and one file, and the second folder which was created is this to do, which is our app. So now that we have everything set up, let's open up our project in Visual Studio Code. So this is Visual Studio Code here. All I just need to do is to press open folder and then open up my project in the directory which I created it in. So I created my own in to-do list directory right here. I'm just going to select the folder and it's automatically going to open on Visual Studio Code. So once it has opened, now we're just going to quit this. We just need to configure some things which are our template file, that means the HTML file which we are going to use, and then we'll get straight into the tutorial. So to do this, we're going to make sure we're in the root directory, and then we're going to create a new folder. We're going to call that folder templates with an S, templates. And in that templates folder, I'm going to move in the HTML which I'm going to use for this project. As I said, I'm going to link the description to everything that we are doing in this video. So all the link to the source code is going to be in the description below. So you can check that out to get all the HTML, CSS and everything we are using in this project. So I have it right here. I'm just going to drag it into Visual Studio Code. And then what I need to do is to paste it in templates. Now that I have this here, I'm just going to press cancel. So what I need to do now for Django to see this, I'm going to come into my to-do list, go into settings, and once I'm in settings, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. I'm going to look for where I see templates. So I'm going to scroll down. As you guys can see, there is template here. So where you see theirs, you are just going to write base there. Then you're going to put a slash. Then inside there, you're going to put templates. This is simply telling Django where all your template files are located. So after doing that, we can cancel settings. Now the next thing we need to do is to come into our to-do app, create a new file called urls.py, and in here we're just going to import path. So we'll say from django.urls import path. So what we want to do now, since we are done with configuring the template file and Django knows where our template is, we just want to root our URL. Simply means we want to provide where our URL should go to when a user comes to our website. So you are going to understand that in a second. So let's go to say URL patterns equals to path, and we're going to leave it blank. Blank means that's the home page. Then we're going to say views.index, and then let's give it a name of index. So for us to use views, we have to import views. So say from the root import views. So now that we are importing views, we also need to go to views, create a new function called index. It must take a request, and then we need to render that HTML page, which is index.html. So I'm going to say return. Okay, right here we're going to say return render request index.html. Now this is going to render that index page. So let me just cancel this. So once I come into urls.py, as you can see, we are telling it that once the user comes to our home, it should take the user to the views.index, and once the user comes to that function, it's just rendering the index.html page. But if we run our project now, it's still going to show us the default Django template. That's simply because we only configured our URLs in our app, we didn't configure it in our project. So if you open your to-do list project, that's the main project folder, you're going to see a urls.py file also. So for us to configure it here, we need to import one thing called include, and then we're going to create another path which is also blank, still means home, and we're just going to say include to-do.urls. Now once we save this, everything is fine. Let's just go ahead and open a new terminal. So right here in the new terminal, we're going to run our project and test it in our browser. So let's just give it a few seconds. Okay, so now let's run our project by saying python manage.py run server. So once this runs on our server, on our local host, we're going to go open our browser and we're going to see this index.html page. So what we just need to do is to copy this localhost, come into our browser and paste it right here. So now we should see, as you guys can see, we see this beautiful Django to-do list app template. So now that we have everything configured on the front end, on the UI, what we just need to do is to start with the backend. So what we want to do now is to create a Django model for the to-do where everything is going to be saved. And then once a user inputs something right here and clicks on add, we're going to submit it to that Django model, and we're just going to show all the objects which are in that model. And then another feature is that once the user clicks on delete, it should just delete that object from the model. It's pretty easy. So let's dive straight into it. So we're going to come right here. We can just close this terminal. And then what we want to do is to open our models.py file. Now we're going to create a new model and let's just call it to do. So we're going to say models.model, and then we only want this to just take one field. So we're going to call this title. I'm going to say models.character field. I'm going to give it a max length. Let's say max length of 1000, and this should be fine. So now what this simply means is that our model is taking only one field, and this field is the title. So if I come into this template, as you can see, this says it's the gym, meet George. All these are the titles of the to-do. So that's what that field is. So all these are just dummy data for now. They are just static data, but when we integrate our database with it, they are going to be dynamic. So let's come back into our Visual Studio Code, and after doing this, let's just return underscore str self. So we want to return that title. So return, we're going to say self dot title. So we can save this. Now if you know Django very well, you should know that once you make any slight change to your models file, you need to make migrations and then migrate into your database. But before you do that, you must make sure that the app in which you are configuring your models.py must be registered in your settings file. So if we come into our settings right here, we're going to go up and look for installed apps. Right here in installed apps, before we migrate our data to our database, we need to add our app, which is called to do, into our installed apps. So doing this alone, we've added the app. We're just going to save it. So you must make sure that this to do correlates with the name of your app. After saving it, we can cancel that. So now we're just going to bring back our terminal. So instead of cutting this server, let's just open a new terminal. So what we want to do is to make migrations and migrate. So say python manage.py make migrations, enter, and then once this make the migrations, and then we're just going to say python manage.py migrate. Now this is going to migrate everything we have into our database. As you can see, it's making all those migrations, which is good. So now that that is done, let's close the terminal. Another thing I like to do is to create a super user and configure my Django admin so I can see all the database easily. So let's bring back our terminal and do that. What we just need to do is to say python manage.py create super user. Now this is going to prompt us to put in some details, just like if we're registering on a site. So we can just say admin let's just give it admin and password. So bypass that. Now that we have this done, let's go ahead and test it. So let's come to our project and go to /admin. So in /admin, it should tell us to log in. So we're going to log in with those details. So admin and also the password, and just click on login. So now it should automatically log us in into Django admin. So right now you can see that we're logged in this Django admin. So the only thing we can see in the database is the user and groups. We also want to register our model which we just created, which is the to-do model. So for us to do this, is very easy. We're just gonna come in here. We can quit this now. We're gonna come into our admin.py file, import our to-do model. So we're gonna say from .models import to-do, and then let's just register it in our admin. So say admin.site.register, and then let's register the to-do. It's that easy. Now once we save it, all we just need to do is to come back and hit refresh. Now as you can see, to-do is already added in our data. So once we click on it, we're going to see the list of to-do in which we have here. So let's say a user comes into, let me just quickly go back right here. What we want to do now is that once a user inputs something right here and clicks on add, it should automatically be saved in this database. So let's go ahead and do that. Now for us to do that, we're going to come back here. Let's come into our views.py, which has our index function. So what I want to do is to go to our index.html. We're just going to scroll down into where we have what we're looking for is this form, this input right here. So we're going to scroll down where we have that. So as you can see, we have that right up here. So it is an input. What we just want to do is to make it a form. So I'm just going to say form. Now we're going to close it. Let me first cut that and see where to close it. So we're going to close it right after the span tag, which is add. So just going to close it right here. And then what we want to do now is to just give this, I think, some indentation. So just give it a little bit of indentation. So that's nice. So since this is in a form now, so guys, what I put in a form is this input right here, this input, and then this add as our submit button. So let's just go back here. So what we want to do, let's make this a submit button. So say type equals to submit. It needs to have this, so say submit. Now we can save this. We must make sure that this have a name, which is this one right here. So say name equals to, let's say, title. So let's save this. So what I want to do now is to just make sure that once the user clicks on add, which is serving as our submit button, it should send those data to our index function. So let's do that. So say action. Let's leave it blank so it sends it back here. And let's say method. Let's give it a post method. We don't need a get method. And then you know that every time we're using a post method, we must always add our CSRF token. CSRF underscore token. So if I save this right now, click on refresh. Once I type in something and then click on add, okay, as you can see, when I click on add, nothing is happening. So I think there's a JavaScript right here, this on click. So this JavaScript is colliding with it. Let's save it and try it again. Let's input something and I click on add. Okay, so it's not serving as the button. So what we just need to do, instead of using, okay, let's put this back. Instead of using a span, we can just change it to a button. So right here also, let's change this to a button. Nice. Now let's go back and then refresh. As you guys can see, it made a little bit of change, but that's okay. So let's just input something and then click on add. So you guys can see that it refreshed that page. So what I want to do, once it refresh that page, it should add whatever the user inputs to the lists of to do right here. Let's go ahead and do that. So we're just going to come into our views.py. So right here in our function, we're going to use an if statement. And that if statement we want to do is to get if it's a post request. So we're just going to say if, let's give it a space. So say if request the method is equals to post. So if is equals to post, what we just want to do is to say new underscore to do should be equals to. So before I continue, we need to import the to do model in which we want to save. So we're gonna say from dot models import to do. So now that we have this model, we can automatically save a data into that model. So I'm just gonna say to do, gonna open a bracket, and then let's say title should be equals to request dot post, which is title. So guys, what I did here is I assigned a new variable, and what I put inside that variable was this to do model, but I'm passing in some fields, a field actually. So this title is basically this title we have in our model. So this title is this title right here. So what we're giving that field is request.post title. So we're just getting this title from a post. If we come into our index.html, we can see that once the user clicks on add, it's posting this input which is named title back into this page. So also in this place, we're going to collect using that post, collecting that title. This title is whatever the user input, and then saving it into this variable. So once we do that, and then we just come down and click on and type new to do dot save, it's automatically going to save it in our database. So after it's saved, let's just return. Let's redirect the user back to this page. Before we can redirect, we need to import redirect. So let's import that. So we're going to say return redirect the user back to the home page. Now that's very easy. So now let's refresh again. No, let's cancel this and hit this. So let's say code. So now once I click on add, you see that it refreshed and brought me back to this page, but nothing show here because we're not getting the list of data for now. But if we come into our to do database and click on refresh, you should see that we have one new data now, which is code, which are input. So that's basically how to do it. Let me go back now. Let me come here, do another thing and say go for a run. So now once I click on enter, come back here and refresh, you see that now we have a new data called go for a run. So what I want to do now is that all this data which we have, that's what we want to show here. We don't want all these static data. Also very easy. We're going to come back into our Visual Studio Code. So right here in our index also, what we just need to do is to get this to do model. So we're going to say to do equals to do dot objects dot all, and then once we have this, we're just going to pass to do right here into our index.html. So we'll say to do should be to do. Now once we save this right here in our index.html, we're going to come down here and use a for loop. So what we need to do now, we can remove all of these. Once we remove all of these, we just need to use a for loop and say for to do. Okay, right here in our views.py, let's name this to do's. So we can say for to do in to do's. So for to do in to do's, then let's end our for loop right here. So let's end for and then right here we're just gonna say to do dot title. We can save this, come back here and refresh. Now as you can see, it gives us everything in which we have right here. So go for a run code, go for a run, but it's reversed. So if I click on something here now, say it's the gym and save it, you can see it's automatically added on the list, but it's on the bottom. So we want the newer to-dos to be on top. For us to do this, we're just gonna come here and say for to do in to-dos reversed. When we save this and come here, you see that it's the latest that is on top. So let's just do something like eat. Now you can see it is on the top. Let's say sleep. Now you can see sleep is on the top. So that's basically how to showcase a list in Django Jinja formats just using the reverse attribute. Very easy. So now that we have this, let me just add one more attribute, which is, as you can see that this everything is in small letter. So we want that even if a user writes it in, let me say, small letter, like buy or clothes. So as you can see, the user started this with the B as a small letter. So once it's showing here, we want it to be cap letter. For us to do this, we're just going to come here, use this and say title. This alone, once we refresh, as you can see, everything now is in caps letter. So that's also a good attribute which might be useful in some of your projects. So now that's good. What we just need to do now, which I think is the last thing, is that once the user comes here and clicks on delete, we want whatever is here to be deleted. Also very easy. We're going to come back here. So we're going to create a new URL, and then let's name this URL delete. So we're going to say path, let's name it delete. But this URL right here is going to be a dynamic URL, and this is because it's taking an input. So when we want to delete a to do, that to do is going to have an ID which is being sent to this delete URL. So for this URL to collect that ID, we need to use a dynamic URL. So we need to pass in a variable. I'm going to say slash, let's give it a string, and let's say pk, like this. So after doing this, we can continue with our normal format, which is views.delete, and then we can say name equals to delete. So this is nice. Now we can come into our views and create a new function and name it delete. Take a request, and after taking a request, it should take pk, and pk is the variable which we assigned here, that is a string. So we're not rendering any HTML page. What we want to do is to just get a particular object from the model. So for us to do this, we're just going to say to do should now be equals to do dot objects dot get the one in which the ID is equals to pk. So now once we get that, we just want to say to do dot delete, and then once it has deleted it, then we want to redirect the user back to the home page. So what we're doing here now, you guys are going to see how we're going to send the ID into this view. So let me explain in detail. When you create an object in a model in Django, automatically each object has an ID. So this code, which is the first object I created, has an ID of 0. This go for a run has an ID of 1. Eat the gym has an ID of 2, and so on like that. So each of them has a unique ID which is being assigned to them. So that unique ID, once I click on delete, that unique ID is going to be used to know which to do the user wants to delete. So once I click on delete, that ID is going to be sent into this URL, and then it's going to be saved into pk, which is this variable. Then we're going to collect that variable named pk into this view. Then what we're doing right here is that we're saying todo.object.get. So this to do is our module in our database, and then we're saying .get, the one in which the ID is equals to pk. And as you know, pk is the ID in which we sent into this view. So we're basically getting the ID which the user wants to delete, and then we're storing that particular object into a variable called to do. So once we already know what the user wants to delete, we just use the attribute to do.delete. It deletes it, and then we return the user back to the home page. So now let's go back and see. Now let's refresh this. So let's click on delete. Nothing happens. This is because we've not yet assigned the variable. Let me show you how to do this. I'm just going to come here, right here in our index where we see delete. So this delete now has to be a link. So I'm just going to give it a link A, and then let's paste delete in there. Then let's say hyperlink. So we're going to use the Django format, and then we're going to say delete, and then want to say to do.id. So once we save this, everything should work. So let's come back here, refresh. Okay, it says invalid right here. So the reason why it's invalid is because it says delete expected empty or N4. Did you forget to load this tag? So what we just need to do is to come here. If I shift to this side, you guys can see that the error is coming from right here. So the problem is the way in which we pass this URL. So we can also pass this URL by saying delete slash, we'll say to do.id. Once we save it and go back, let's make sure we have everything correct. Now once we refresh, we shouldn't be seeing this error. Now you can see that this delete is showing as a link. We'll take care of that later. But now let's click on delete and see what happens. As you guys can see, that particular to do is gone. Let's click on the next one. That is gone. Click on this, is gone. And then let's also try to add jog. As you can see, it's there. Once I click on delete, it's gone. So that's basically how to build a basic to-do list app. So now let's just take care of this blue link which is showing there. For us to do this, we're just going to use a basic CSS. We're going to say style equals to text decoration. So say text decoration should be none. So this CSS is going to remove all the text decoration which is assigned to a link. So once we refresh, you guys can see that it doesn't have that line under it again, but the color is still blue. So also very easy, we're just gonna come here and say color. Okay, let's shift back. Right in the style, I'm gonna say color should be black. Let's save this, refresh. Now you can see that the color is black, and once we hit on delete, everything still works successfully. Delete again, still works successfully. Now let's just test run our app once again. So now we can add a new to do. Let's say it's the gym. It enters. Oh, we've added that before. So let's just delete that, and let's just say learn flask. So click on enter. As you can see, it brings up this learn flask, and it brings it up the latest side of the table of the lists. and we can also delete. And one feature which we added, if we put in small letter, it's automatically going to show it in cap letter. So I hope you guys learned something from this tutorial section. If you did, please don't forget to smash the like button and please subscribe. Now that we've successfully completed our app, what we just need to do is to host our app on Heroku. It's very easy to do this. We just need to make sure we have some Python libraries installed. And these Python libraries are Gunicon and Django Heroku. So let's go ahead and install them. Pip install Gunicon and Django Heroku. So I already have this installed. It's going to tell me requirements already satisfied, but I just did it to show you how to install those libraries, so you should go ahead and install on your computer. So now that we have that installed, what we need to do is to come into our root directory. Let's close all these. In our root directory, we're going to create a new file, name it runtime.txt. In that runtime.txt, what we need right there is our Python version. So the Python version in which we use for this project is what we're looking for. To get that, we'll come to our terminal and type Python version. Python 2 hyphens with version. So as you can see, I am using Python 3.7.4. So I'm going to say Python, then I'm going to say hyphen 3.7.4. So that's the way you should write your version. Let's just save it and then quit this file. The next thing we need to do now is to create a new file. Let's make sure we close this. And these files must be in the root directory. The root directory means the directory which contains the manage.py file. So that's the root directory of any Django project. So now in the root directory, we're going to create a new file and name it proc file with no extension. So proc file like this. And what should go in here is a piece of code. Now this is how the code is. So instead of this is just like a line of code boilerplate, something like that. So instead of contact list is the name of your app, so it should be to-do list. So that's how it should be: web gunicon to-do list.wsgi column application 2 hyphens log 1 hyphen file space and hyphen. So that's what should go into this file. Then we're going to save this file. So after having this done, what we just need to do is to come into our terminal and press pip freeze requirements.txt. Now when we press enter, a new file here is created named requirement.txt. What is in that file is all the Python libraries in which we used in this project. So after doing that, now we're going to come into our settings.py file, and then we're going to add some things. So up here we have to import Django Heroku, and the second thing we need to import is DJ database URL. Import DJ underscore database URL. So the next thing we need to do is to go into that our database and then change it from SQLite. We're going to change it to the database in which Heroku is going to recognize. So we're going to change this default, not going to be an array or a list. It's going to be DJ database URL.config. Now this is how it should be. I'm just going to press save. The next thing I need to do right now is to go down into my project. Right here, I'm going to say Django Heroku, then dot settings, open bracket locals, then open bracket close bracket. Now I'm going to save this file again. The last thing we're doing in this file is to go to allowed hosts and just press this to allow all hosts like this. So once we save it, we're done with this file. Now after doing all this thing, we can now start with our command line, that's with our Heroku. So we need to say Heroku login So what's going to happen now is that it's going to prompt us to click on something, and then it's going to open our default browser, and then in there we're going to log into Heroku automatically. So when I click on login, it should tell me logged in. You can close this page and return to your CLI. So once I close this page and go back, you can see now it automatically logs me in. So what I just need to do now is to say Heroku create, and let me say to do list. So once I create this to do list, it's automatically going to create this to do list app in my Heroku account. So once it creates that, we're just going to start with the git. So as you can see, it's creating. Okay, it says to do list already created. My mind wasn't really there, so let me just say to do list. Let me just give it random words like 789. So let's see. I don't think that should be taken. Okay, it's creating. Yeah, it's created. So what we need to do now is to just say git status. Okay, then we're going to say git init. So now it's going to initialize the repository, and let's say git status again. Now it should give us something, right? And then we're going to say git remote -v. Nice. And what we want to say now is git remote add Heroku. Now what we want to add, we're going to scroll up right here. When we created the app, you see it gave us two URL. We're going to take the second URL, which has .git at the end, scroll down and paste that. So it's going to be git remote add Heroku, then that URL. So I'm going to hit on enter. So now I'm just going to say git remote v again. So that's nice. And now I'm going to say git status. Okay, nice. So now what I want to do is to create our database on our cloud. So I'm going to say Heroku add-ons. I'm going to say column create. I'm going to say Heroku -postgres QL, then column. I'm saying going to hobby dev. So that's what I need to say. So I think this should be an hyphen. So now once I click on enter, it should run that command line. So let's wait for a response. Okay, so it's creating. It said couldn't find a service named hobby dev. Okay, that's a typographical error. I put two O's instead of two B. So let's wait for that and let's see. Should create that for us in some seconds. Okay, nice. So it says database has been created and it's available. The database is empty. Okay, nice. So the database has been successfully created. So now that we have our database created, what we just need to do is to commit. So we're just going to say git add, and then after adding we'll say git commit -m. Then I'm gonna say the first time. And then let's close that. Now when we click on enter, we're gonna commit that. So that's nice. Then as for the last step, we're just gonna say git push Heroku master. Okay, there was typographical error there, so I don't think it will work. So let's just wait for that to give us an error. Then we're going to say git push Heroku master. Okay, so move this and it should be git. So git push Heroku master. Now this is going to deploy everything which you've been doing on the URL in which it created earlier. Let me show you the URL of the app. So when we are creating, if I come here, when we created this app, which is to do list 789, you see it gave us this URL right here. So once it deploys it, it's going to deploy it on this URL. So once it's done and click on this URL, what we're going to see is this app in which we've been building since. So let's scroll down and see how far the deployment is going. Okay, it gave us an error. If we come back here, So the reason for that error, it says, now this is very good because you also know how to debug. So it says request runtime is not available for this stack Heroku 20. Okay, that's nice. So what we just need to do right here is to come into runtime.txt. So the reason why we're getting that error is because of our runtime. So our Python version is too low for Heroku 20. So if I scroll up here, I'm going to see that it says Heroku 20 stack. So I'm just going to update to one of the latest versions. We'll say 3.9.1. And then what we just need to do is to commit those changes. So I'm just going to say git add and then git commit, and then we're just going to say git push Heroku master. Now this shouldn't give us any errors again. So let's just give it a few seconds. Installing Python. Nice. So everything is working. So because Heroku has been upgraded to Heroku 20, the stack is now 20, that's why we're getting that error. So note that if you are using Django and you like deploying on Heroku, you need to be using Python 3.9 version to be specific. So let's just give it a few seconds to deploy. Okay, installing collected packages. Nice. Okay, so just gonna wait. So it should be done in a few seconds because all the main stuffs are done already. So you should just deploy it to our URL. Yes, done. Yes, so it's deployed to Heroku. As you can see, this link is deployed to Heroku. So let's just wait for the last confirmation, and then it's going to opt out of that command. So let's wait for it. Okay, nice. So now let's click on this URL. So let's open the link. Once we open the link, we should just see our app. It said programming error. So anytime in which you are dealing with database and then you just deployed your app, you need to also make migrations, just the way you make migration once you change your model.py file. I'm just gonna come in here, say Heroku run python manage.py make migrations, and then after making migrations, we're just gonna say Heroku run python manage.py migrate. So that's gonna do and solve all the problems. So let's give it a seconds to run that. Okay, running python manage.py make migrations. So that should run that within no time. Running, still running. Okay, no changes detected, so let's just migrate. So now once this migrates successfully, we're just going to go refresh our link, and then we should see our to-do list app. So let's wait and see. Okay, see migrating. Let's see, up, run, and then go. Yes, so that's nice. Let's just wait. Nice. So now once we come here and then refresh, we shouldn't see any error. So as you guys can see, it says Django to-do list app. Now we can just add and say it's the gym. And once you press enter, you see it's added already, and we can say code added. We can say take a run, and it should be added. So as you guys can see, everything is working perfectly. Let me just try to delete one. So let's click on delete, and you guys can see that is gone. So everything is working perfectly. It's hosted online, the database is connected, and I walked you guys through all these steps. So thank you for watching this section of the video, and you can go to this URL to check it out live. It's live now, and I'm not taking it down. So thank you for watching once again. In this part of the tutorial, we're going to be building an English dictionary using Django. So user is going to be able to search for a word and get the meaning of that word, the synonyms and the antonyms of that word also. So let's start by installing Django. We'll say pip install Django. and then it should tell me requirement ready satisfied. Django admin start app, start project, and let's name it English dictionary. So let's move into English dictionary. And then let's start an app, a Django app, and let's name it dictionary. So now when I press dir, I should see manage.py, English dictionary, and then dictionary. So let me come into Visual Studio Code and then open this project I just created. I'm going to click on open folder, and then right here, all I just need to do is to select this folder, and then it should open in my editor. So now that I have this, let me just start configuring. The first thing I need to do is to create a new folder in here and name it templates. So this template folder is going to contain all our HTML files. So let me just move in the HTML file for this project. Let me move it into Visual Studio Code. So now that we have that in there, what I just need to do is to go to English dictionary, then settings.py, and I'm just gonna go down a little bit, and right here I'm gonna say base there, base underscore there, then slash templates. Now this is just to tell Django where our HTML files are located. After doing this, I just need to do the URL mapping. So I'm going to come into dictionary. I'm going to create a new file, urls.py. In there, I'm going to say from django.urls import path. And after importing this, I'll say URL patterns equals to path, and I'll say views dot index, and let me give it a name of index. So let me first import views before I'm able to use it. So I'll say from roots import views. So I'm going to go into views folder now and create a new function named index. So I'm going to say def index. It's going to take a request, and then I'm going to render this HTML page in this template folder. So I'll say return render request index.html. Okay, let's make sure this is correct. Index.html. So before our index.html can show as our home page, we also need to come into the project folder and open urls.py. Right here, we need to import include. After importing include, then we're going to say path, then include. I'm going to say dictionary.urls. Then I'm going to save it. Now I can quit this. Let me just open a new terminal. And then what I need to do now is just to run my project. Now when I run this project, my HTML that I rendered is going to show as the home page. So let me open up my browser, and then I'm going to open up my localhost in my browser. So let me open up localhost. So now it should show me my project. As you can see, it shows me this simple HTML page with just a form. So this is what we need to build the dictionary. Very simple. So you are just going to type in a word. Once you click on search, it's going to say the meaning and synonyms of the word right here. So let's simply do that. This is very, very easy. What we just need to do now is to first of all create a new view, and let's name it word. Let's say requests, and let's say return render request. And then we're going to create another HTML page. Let's name it word.html. We've not created it now, but we're going to create it. So let's save it for now, and let's also create a new view, name it word. Let's save, and let's go back to our views. This should be return. Then let's save this. So in our URLs, since it's a list, it should have a comma. So after doing that, we're just going to come into template, and let's first create a new file. Let's name it word.html. Now we're going to leave this file blank for now. Let's close this terminal. Now in this index, what we want to do is to make this a form. So we're going to scroll down right here. Let me first say h2 search for a word. So let's see the changes. Okay, it shows but not pretty cool, so let's leave it. So what we want to do now is to make sure that this is a form. So we're going to say form, and then we're going to close the form after this button, like this. So what we want to do after closing the form after the button, we're just going to say action, and this action is going to the word URL, like this. Now we must make sure that these inputs have a name, which it doesn't now. So now we're just going to say name should be equals to search. So this is the search term in which a user searched. Then it's going to be submitted into this word. So I'm just going to come right here in the views, and we're going to get that word. We're going to say search equals to request dot get, and we're going to say word. I think it's search. So what this is must be the name which you assign into the input. That's why I intentionally put a name field here, because that's what we're going to use to get whatever the user searched for. So now that we have this, how are we going to get the name, the meaning, synonyms, and antonym? So we're going to use a Python library called PyDictionary. So let me bring up my terminal here real quick. Let me open a new terminal. So for us to install this module, we need to type pip install PyDictionary. So I have it installed. It should tell me requirement already satisfied, but for you, you should go ahead and install it. As you can see, it says requirement already satisfied. So let me go back to my normal terminal and quit. So what I just need to do right here is to import this library. So I'm just going to say from PyDictionary import PyDictionary. Now that I have this imported, I'm just going to say dictionary should be equals to PyDictionary with brackets. So now that we have the search, which is also the word, we're just going to get the meaning and store it in a variable named meaning. So say meaning equals to dictionary dot meaning of this search. So that's the meaning. And then we're also going to do the same thing for synonyms. It will be equals to dictionary dot synonym of the search. We're going to do a similar thing for the antonyms. So antonyms will be equals to dictionary dot antonyms of the search. So this is how to simply do it. And after doing this, what we just need to do is to put it in a context. So in here, I'm just gonna say the meaning. So the meaning should be equals to the meaning because to the antonym. Then we are going to pass all this into our word.html. So meaning should be meaning, comma. Let's just copy it and say synonyms should be synonyms, and antonyms also should be antonyms. So we can just pass this right here and say context, and let's save. So now once we save this and we come into our word.html, what I want us to do is to just copy all these, paste it right here, and then what we want to do now is that under here we want to write the meaning and antonyms and synonyms of the word. So that will be under the button, under the form. So let's say meaning, let's give it like an h3. Let's say meaning now should be equals to meaning. So now let's first test meaning before we continue. So let's just save this, and then what we want to do is to come here into our browser and refresh. So let's search for it, and then let's click on search. And once we click on search, as you guys can see, it takes us to another page, word search equals it. It says meaning equals all of this. So what we want to do, we just want to get only the first meaning, we don't need the rest, and we need to parse this CSS right here. So we're going to come into our Visual Studio Code, and then right here in the word, instead of putting it right here, I'm just gonna put it outside the wrap, and then in views.py, meaning will be meaning a noun like this, and the first one 0. So we can test this again. So once we go to the home page, it should take us, yeah, so let's search for it again, and then once we click on search, it should take us to the word page, and now we say key error at noun. Okay, so what it's simply saying is that in the dictionary that this is bringing back, there is no key named noun. So we just need to patch that. So that is because it is not a noun, so we can basically do that in plenty other ways, but for now let's just search for set, and then let's see. As you guys can see, meaning a group of things of the same kind that belong together and are used. So that's how to get the meaning of the word. So we also want to get the synonyms and antonyms. So we're just going to use a for loop right here. So I'm going to say exactly the same thing. I'm going to say for let's come into our views and get what we passed. Synonym in synonyms, so we just want to pass in the synonym, and then what we just want to do is to end for. And then we're also going to do the same thing for the antonyms. So let's delete this, copy this, and paste. So let's try for the antonyms also. So in the word, so it will be 4 antonym. In antonyms, then this should be antonym, then end 4. So let's go back and see. So if you just refresh this page, we should see the meaning with the antonym and synonyms. Okay, as you guys can see, if I scroll, okay, so it's basically just listing everything out. So we just need to pass that and let it just put it in a word. So first of all, this is not meaning. What we need to do now is this. Bring this in here. I'm going to bring it into the h3 tag instead of outside. So I'm gonna do like this and just end 4. Same thing we're gonna do here into the h3 tag, and we're also going to end 4 in the h3 tag. So that's what we want to do. So right here also we want to say synonyms, and then right here we want to say antonyms before the for loop. So let's just give it caps later. And we can save. Once you come back here and refresh this page now, we should see it aligned horizontally. As you guys can see, meaning a group of things of the same kind that belong together and are so used. Synonyms: bed, snuggle, put, inlay, and lot of synonyms. So we just want to use comma to separate each of them. So I'm just going to put comma right here and also comma right here. So we just press that, and once we refresh, we should see comma, so that everything will be refined. So as you can see, meaning a group of things of the same kind that belong together and are so used. So synonyms, it gives us all the synonyms. Antonyms also give us all the antonyms. So let's search for English, just searching for the meaning, and then we should see the meaning, synonyms, and antonyms. As you can see, it says meaning an Indo-European language, and also give us the synonyms and then the antonyms. So that's how to build an English dictionary using Django. I hope you enjoyed it. Now that we finished building this project, what we need to do is to deploy it online. So for us to do this, we need to have 2 Python libraries installed, and these libraries are Gunicon and Django Heroku. So to install them, you say python install pip install Gunicon and Django Heroku. So I already have them installed. It will tell me requirements already satisfied, but for you, it should go ahead and install that. So now the next thing we need to do is to go into our root directory and create a new file named runtime.txt. So in this runtime.txt, what is going to be in there is the Python version in which you are using. So mine is Python 3.9.1. So I'm just going to save this, and then what I need to do now is to create another file named procfile. And then what is going to go in here is a file, is this code. So change this project to the name of your project, which mine is English Dictionary. So you can save this file now and close it. So after doing this, the next thing you need to do is to come into your terminal and say pip freeze requirements .txt. Now you'll notice that it's going to create a new file here. That's because it's storing all the libraries in which we used in this project. So now let's come into settings.py. We're going to go to database. Okay, since we are not using database in this video, we don't need to configure anything for database. But what we just need to go is come up, import Django Heroku, and then scroll down, allow hosts. Let's allow all hosts, and then we're going to scroll down to the bottom and say Django Heroku dot settings locals and open bracket close bracket. After doing this, I'm just going to come into my command line and say Heroku login. So now it's going to prompt me to open my default browser and then log in to Heroku from there. So it should give me an option like press any key to open your browser or press Q to quit. So if you press any key, it's going to open your browser. If you press Q, it's going to quit, like you can see. So if I press H, it's going to open up my default browser like this and then log in. Now I'm logged in. If I go back in there, you can see that I'm now logged in. So what I just need to do now is to create an Heroku app. So I'll say Heroku create, and let me name it English Dictionary YT. So right now it should create that app and then give me two URLs. One is the URL to the Git repository and the other is URL to my app. So now that we have this, we're just going to say git status. Okay, then we're going to initialize it by saying git init and then git status again. And now we're just going to say git remote v, and then we're just saying say git remote add Heroku, and then we're going to add that git repository right here. So I'm just going to copy it, come down and paste it. Nice. So we're going to say git remote v again. Nice. And then we're going to say git status. So what I just need to do now is to just say git add, and I'm going to say git commit, let me say the first time, enter, and then I'm just going to say git push Heroku master. So now it's going to deploy it to Heroku. So we're just going to give it a couple of seconds to deploy our project onto Heroku. It doesn't take too long depending on how large your project is. So let's see. Okay, it's working. So everything is going on fine right now. I'm just gonna give it a couple of seconds. Install, yes, installing collected packages. Okay, compressing. After compressing, it should say done. Yes, so it has said done. That means it has been deployed. So I'm just going to wait for the last confirmation and then it's going to opt out of this command. So let's just wait for that confirmation and then we're going to open this up. So done. So when I click on control and click, it's going to open up in my browser. So as you guys can see, it opened it up. So let's just search for English. So when we search for English, you guys can see it brought out the meaning, synonyms, and antonyms. So let's search for another thing like sports. So as you guys can see, it brought out the meaning, synonyms, and antonyms. So that's how to build a basic English dictionary using Django. So we've hosted this. You can go to this URL now to view it. If you enjoyed this part of the video, please don't forget to like it and smash the like button. And if you have any question, please drop it down in the comments. So guys, that's gonna be the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching to this part. If you like this video, once again, please don't forget to smash the like button and please subscribe. And if you like more videos like this and building more projects on web development with Python, Django, and stuff like that, you can also check out my channel at Code with Tommy. Having that said, bye for now.